Now that we created a database file, which we learned how to do in the previous training video, we're going to now create our first access object in that file, a table. Again, a table is where we enter and store our raw organized data into. Then once we have some data, we can then add additional objects to work with that data, our queries, forms, and reports. Now, in the previous training video, when we created our database file, Access automatically had a table ready for us to work with. But I closed out of mine because I wasn't ready to add any fields to that table. But now that I'm ready, let's go ahead and create that table. Come up here on the ribbon and let's go to the Create tab. Well, that makes sense. I want to create something. Click on it. Go to the Tables group. I'm going to create a table. Now before I go ahead and click on Table, you're probably wondering, well, can't we do it in Design? Well, you can see in the other groups here, there's more than one way to create your forms, queries, and reports. But we'll keep it simple, and I'll go over that later on. For right now, let's go ahead and create a table in the Datasheet view as opposed to the Design view. And we'll cover both. But first off, let's create a new blank table in Datasheet view. Click on it, and we're back to where we started in the previous training video before we closed out of the table. So we have a generic table that's listed over here in the navigation pane under the Headings table. And instead of Table 1, well, I want to give it a name because my database is computer inventory, or keeping track of our company's computers. And so the data that I need is a table for computers. So let's go ahead and rename that. You can do that by simply saving it. So if it's the first time you're saving your table, just come up here, click on Save, and it will force a Save As. So you can go ahead and update the name here. Instead of Table 1, let's do Computers. Now before I go ahead and click OK, as you recall in an earlier training video, when you're working in the back end, the design views of like forms and reports and other areas in Access, when I wanted to be able to assign a table or even a query to that report or to base that report or form upon, if I have the same name for the table as I do for a query, when I want to choose which object I want to base that report or form upon, if they have the same name, there's no way to identify that it's the table as opposed to a query. Now you can do it here because it's going to be under the corresponding heading. So I can have computers here for the table and computers for the query, and it will be under the query heading. But on the back end, in some of the areas like forms and reports, you don't get that lovely option. So either don't have them named the same name and have them memorized, what names are your tables and what names are your queries, or to try to keep it simple, especially if you're going to be handing this off to somebody else at some point in time, to give it a 3-letter prefix before your name that identifies this as a table. So, well, you can do more than 3 letters. You can type out table, but the naming convention typically is just 3 letters, TBL, table. Then if it's a query, QRY, form, FRM, report, RPT. And then click Okie dokie, and there we go. And it's updated here. Now the first field that's been created for us already is the ID field. And what Access is trying to tell us is that when you're creating your tables and you're adding fields here, there ought to be a field that is unique, that is not going to contain any duplicates, that will uniquely identify each record. So for example, if you have a customers table or an employees table and you have a field for their first name, last name, street address, phone number, and so on, if you have hundreds or thousands of them, what's the chance that you're going to have an employee or a customer with the same first name? So we can't narrow it down when we're looking for a Bob because we may have like 5 or 10 Bobs. You could go to the last name and say, okay, the last name is Smith. That may not be helpful. So you see what I'm saying? So what it's doing here is it's got an ID field that when you enter a record in for the first record and go to the next one, well, let me go ahead and click in that field. You'll be able to see up here on its related contextual tabs for the table tools, the fields in the table, but we're looking at the fields right now. Over here in the formatting group, the type of data or data type that can be entered into that field is an auto number, and it's just like it sounds. It's going to automatically generate a number in that field for each record. What kind of number? Well, it's going to start with the smallest number, 1. So you type in your first record and it's going to have 1. Second record, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, well, as many records as you enter therein. So that way it's always going to be unique to identify each record. But you don't have to use the default here if you don't like, and I'll show you later on how you can go ahead and change that up. And for your employees, you may want to change this to like their social security number because that's a unique identifier for each employee. So it's just trying to help you out. You don't have to go with what they got. You can go ahead and customize it, change it, but as a reminder, make sure you got a field that is unique to each record, or that's going to be different and not be a duplicate, like 1-1 or 1-2, or have the same first names, or can't have any duplicate last names. So that's why we got a unique identifier here. And for my computer table, or if you have other products like books, software, one way to identify your products and my computers uniquely is by the asset tag, or the barcode, UPC symbol. So let me go ahead and update the label here, and I'll update the data type so it doesn't automatically generate 1, because there's no UPC symbol out there or asset tag that just has 1. So for right now, let's just go ahead and show you how you can update the label here by double clicking on it. You can see it aligns it over to the left hand side. That means it's in edit mode. Just simply start typing. And there you go. When you're done, hit enter, it accepts it, and it goes to the next field, and it opens up a shortcut menu for the data type or type of data that you like to be entered into that field before you can go ahead and enter in a label for that field. So you can have text enter into the field, and there's two different types for your text. You can have short text or long text. And the difference between the two, to make your database more efficient, you want to choose short text if you're going to have 255 characters or less in that field. But if you have just one record that's going to contain more than 255 characters, then you're going to have to go with long text. And of course, you can have numbers in there or a number you enter to be formatted in currency. So what type of data do you want to be able to, the front-end user, enter into that field? And for this one, it's going to be short text. Once I select the type of data that can be entered, it goes to the name for the field, and field 1, well, that doesn't tell me what I'm supposed to be entering into that field, so I just simply type over it. And it's going to be the manufacturer for the computers. Once I'm done, hit enter, and then it goes to the next field. It says, okay, select the type of data that can be entered into that field, and then you can choose a name for it, and it'll keep on going and going, and let's click off and call it good for the moment. And right now I'm looking at the manufacturer field, and it's kind of cut off. So if you want to be able to see the entire label for that field, or be able to see more of the contents when you have data down below for the first record, second record, and so on, just go ahead and hover up in between the two column headers until you can see arrows pointing in opposite directions. Then you can go ahead and click and drag, and it pushes the field on the right over to the right, but stretches the one to the left. So it stretched it open. That looks beautiful. Or let me click off. Of course, you can click and drag and squish it back in, but then, man, what's that about? So in addition to clicking and dragging, you can do what's called a best fit, that when you hover in between those two column headers, just double click really fast, and it automatically fits to the longest text within the column and its manufacturer. Now in the front view here, in the datasheet view, if you're curious about what type of data can be entered into the field, or you want to update it, change the data type, as long as it's not too late. And what I mean by that is, like, if I click back in the manufacturer label here, so it selects the entire, well, label and column. Up here in the related contextual table tools, the fields tab, you can go to the formatting group, and there's the short text, and then if you want to change that to long text, well, that makes sense. But if you have it long text and you have records already in here where you have one that has 300 and you want to truncate it down to short text to 255, you'll cut it off, and it will warn you about that. So you want to be careful about, once you set your database up, if you want to go from something more to less, it will cut it down and you lose your data if you're not careful. And you can see the field size for that field is 255. If you want to come in here and make it less, 10, hit enter, that's fine. So the maximum amount of characters you can type in the field is 10, but the limit for short text is 255. So if I come in here and I try to go 256 and hit enter, it says, you can't do that, okay? Because the max is 255. Okay, click okie dokie, and then let's just go back to 255. Now that's designing your table in the front end, or the datasheet view, where you can, well, design it and also enter in data in that view. Now that's the front end view, the datasheet view, where you can design it and also enter in data, as opposed to the other view, which is just the design view. You can change views by coming up here on the Fields tab in the Views group and click on the ruler pencil, goes to the Design view. It brings up the property sheet. I don't need to see that just right now. Let's close out of it. And there you go. You can see that up here, the Related Contextual Table Tools tab is Design. So that's one way to find out you're in the design view besides the different view. And also over here in the views group, you got the sheet for the data sheet if you want to go back to the data sheet. But in any case, here you go. You've got your design where you can go ahead and type in your field name, the data type or type of data, and then a description, as when I select in the field down below, it says it helps you to describe the field and is also displayed in the status bar when you select this field in a form. Oh, that's nice. So you can give the front-end user help if you create a form based upon this table by typing in what that field's about. So when they get to that field, they can look down below as it says on the status bar here that tells them the purpose of the field if they need help. And of course it's optional. And sometimes it's helpful when you're designing a database is to let the next person know, or as a reminder, if you design it and then it's going to be a while before you get back into it and you need to restructure it, what these fields are for. And then we've got the manufacturer, the short text, and then down below we've got the field properties. So if we want to go ahead and add another field, just click in the next available cell down below and type in the field's name. Now let's go ahead and enter another field for our table, but this time in the design view. Ooh, that's so exciting. Let's go ahead and just type in date received. So we're going to have the date when we received our computers. Hit the tab key. And the default data type or type of data is short text, and that's not date. So let's go ahead and change that to date/time. And then I can hit the tab key and type in a description if I'd like. Now for the date time, the format, if I want to have it displayed in short or long format, you know how the month is spelled out, and maybe include the time or not include the time. Well, to go ahead and change the property for that field or the field properties, then let's just come down here with any one of these cells selected for that field. It doesn't have to be the field name. It could be the data type for that field or the description for that field. Once you have one of those cells selected for that field, then just come down below into the field properties and click in the format. Now you can come down here and click in the cell, that works, or if you're up here you can hit the F6 key on the keyboard, automatically takes you down to the field properties, the first cell, the format field. And then over to the far right of the field, you get a little drop down arrow, go ahead and click on it. Hey, there we go. So we can have the general format, general date. You can have the long date. Whew, it's a bit too long. Let's have something that doesn't include such lengthiness, and let's do a short date. Select that, and so that's going to be the format for that field when we enter in a date that we receive the computers. And then after I select that format, you get a lightning bolt. Go ahead and hover over it. It gives you a property update option that you can click on, and it says you can update the format everywhere the date received is being used. So when I update it in the table, if I have a form report based upon this table, I can also update that format in the forms and reports, which is nice because maybe I just want it in the table and not to display the short date or update it to the other objects within the database. But since I don't have any other objects when I click on it, it says no objects needed to be updated. Okay. Now before we go any further, if you need to reorganize your fields, like you want the date received to be first, you can go ahead and hover over on the row header, the gray box for any one of these fields, and you get a black arrow pointing to the right. Go ahead and click on it, and it selects the entire row or that field. Then once it's selected, you can go ahead and click on it again, and then notice that gray fuzzy box below my pointer. That means it's got a hold of something. And so once I got a hold of it and not letting go of the left mouse button, I can go ahead and move it up. And wherever that black line is, not necessarily the pointer, as you can see the pointer is just barely touching the first row header there. It doesn't mean it's going to dump it right between the asset tag and manufacturer or move it between the two. So if I want to be able to move the date received above the manufacturer, then the black line's there. Let go, and there you go. And then to move it back, of course, click and drag and move it back. Now if you have more than one field to move around at the same time, then go ahead and click on one and drag down to the next, and then let go of the mouse. Then go ahead and click on any one of those row headers to select both of them. And then of course you can move both of them at the same time. You got that option. You can also, let me click off, right click on the row header, and you get other options like you can add additional rows, delete rows, cut, and then paste your rows around. In any case, clicking and dragging is easier for me unless you've got a lot of rows. Then clicking this row down to, well, row 25, that gets a bit touchy. So maybe I just want to go ahead and right click to cut and then right click to paste. But let me go ahead and click on that to select it and click and drag it back up so I can reorder it the way I had it before we started messing with that. Let's go ahead and add another field. This one's going to be the purchase price. Hit the tab key, and because we're dealing in dollars, let's go ahead and click on the drop down arrow, currency. Or are we really dealing with dollars? Maybe we're dealing in a foreign currency, so we may want to change the formatting for the data type. With it selected, you can hit the F6 key on the keyboard. It takes me right down to the properties for that field. And with currency selected, we can click on the drop down arrow and we can change it from the default US dollars or whatever country you're in the default is and choose something else like the euro or something fixed standard. Let's go back to just currency. And then below that, you can change the decimal places. The default's automatic. You can also click on its far right arrow and say that you want 0 decimals. And then, of course, you can go ahead and click on the tag to update that feature, not just in the table, but to all the other Access objects. And if you need help on any one of these fields, like, okay, what's decimal places about? You can look over to the right and get a short little blurb on it, or if you want even more details, with the cursor flashing in the decimal places field in this example, go ahead and hit the F1 key on the keyboard. Opens up the internet. And there you go, decimal places property access. And it says, hi there, you've landed on here because you hit F1 to get some help. Now what help do you want? Do you want the decimal places for the combo box? We haven't covered that yet. Or for the text box, which is what we're covering right now. So let's go ahead and click on that. And it gives us a blurb. You can use the decimal places properties to specify the number of decimal places Microsoft Access uses. You can go ahead and read that. Let's scroll down. Get a little bit more particular here. Because you had two different settings, you had the auto and then you have, well, the numbers you can choose between 0 to 15. Now for the auto, it says the numbers appear as specified by the format properties setting. As opposed to, well, choosing your own number, not having it done automatically, where it says the digits to the right of the decimal separator appear with the specified number of decimal places. So to the right, you could have 0 decimal places. Cool. In any case, you can learn more about that in greater detail in any one of these fields down below by clicking in it. If it's not good enough for what you have over here, you want more details, well, like it says, F1 for help as what I have selected there. Let's go ahead and add another field. This one's going to be the warranty. Hit the tab key. Now for the warranty, we could say yes, they have it, or no, they don't. So instead of typing in 3 letters, YES for yes, let's go ahead and change it to yes or no. That way we can become more efficient in our data entry if I don't have to type it all in, but have a box that I can check for the warranty, checked yes or unchecked no. And in fact, let's go down to the field properties for that and click in the format field, and there's the yes no. You can also click on the drop down arrow and say true. They do have it, or false, or on or off, but well, that doesn't make sense, but nonetheless you can choose depending upon what the purpose of your field. So in this case for the warranty, yes they have it, or no they don't. Now that our table is completed, let's go ahead and go to the datasheet view and start entering in data for all the fields, creating a record. So let's come back up here and to switch views, click on the view button. Oh, it wants us to save the table first before we switch views. So let's go ahead and say yes. And there we go. Hey, cool. Well, except they're being cut off here, so I can double click in between the column headers to do a best fit, right? Click, great, click off. So to start entering in data for my first computer, we've got our asset tag, which is going to be a number generated automatically for me. It's going to be number 1, and we'll leave that like that for now. And then for the manufacturer, well, I have 3 manufacturers that I purchased my computers from. And right now, the front-end user can go ahead and type in the name of the manufacturers, and they are Atlas, High-Tech, and Micron. You can imagine if I have a bunch of front-end users entering in data here at the same time, and they want to enter in Atlas, but maybe they don't spell it correctly, so it could be A-T-L-E-S, L-I-S, L-A-S. Well, technically, if they misspell it, that many Atlases, then I'll have 3 different manufacturers or more. And so if I want to be able to control the input so there's only one Atlas that is spelled correctly with an A-T-L-A-S and not any other misspelled words, then what I can do is I can go ahead and convert this field into a lookup. So I can control the data entered into that field and not have a bunch of misspelled manufacturers. So to do that, let's go back to the design view, and we can right-click on the tab, go to design, go to the manufacturer field, and instead of just typing in some text, we want to click on the drop-down arrow and say we want to do a Lookup Wizard. Click on that, and it opens up the wizard, and Microsoft has wizards that it'll do something magical for you. Well, basically, it'll ask a bunch of questions, and depending upon your answers, it'll create, in this case, a field that will look up the values that we want to see in that field. So you can either have the lookup field gather values from another table or query, which I don't have another one, or we can just go ahead and type in the values that we want to see in that field. We'll keep it simple. We'll choose that and click Next. And it says, what kind of values do you want to see in your lookup field? Enter the number of columns you want in the list. Now, as far as the columns go, why would you want additional columns than just the initial column to look up the value? Like for the manufacturers, I have 3, Atlas, High-Tech, and Micron. The reason why you may want more columns if you want to get more descriptive. Like for example, just come down below and type in 2 and hit the tab key and we've got 2. So I can type in the manufacturer and then in column 2, like 3 out of 4 stars. They're a great manufacturer. Now for column 1, you want to make sure it's going to be unique and you don't have duplicates. For column 2, 3, 4, it doesn't matter. So I can go ahead and say the same thing about, well, High-Tech and Micron, 3 out of 4 stars. They're a great manufacturer in column 2. Whatever I want to enter into the second, third, or fourth, or fifth columns. But I want to go ahead and keep it simple. Let's go back to just one column, hit the tab key, and type in the name of my 3 manufacturers, Atlas, and then you can see a little pencil. I'm in write mode until I go ahead and hit the tab key and go to the next blank cell to enter in the next manufacturer, tab, and then Micron. And then go ahead and hit tab and I've got the 3. Now you can go ahead and adjust the column here if you'd like by hovering over the right hand side until you can see arrows pointing in opposite directions, and click and drag to make it bigger, or do a double click to do a best fit to the longest text within the column, which looks like it's High-Tech, and that's good. Let's go ahead and click Next, and then what name do we want to give it? We'll keep it the same, manufacturer. And then do you want to limit the entry to the choices? So when I check limit to list, it means that they can't choose anything but what's in the list. Or I can allow multiple values, meaning that for the 3, if they want to choose Atlas and High-Tech or all 3, then they have that option, because maybe the hard drive was manufactured from Atlas, the processor from High-Tech. Well, in any case, let's keep it simple. If I don't check any of these, the default will be to limit it to the list. So to save you time, if you want to keep it limited to the list, then just click Finish. And there you go. Well, I know it says data type short text. Access doesn't update it to say lookup, so you'll just have to trust me. And let's go ahead and click Save and take a look at it by clicking on the View button to go to the Datasheet view. Thanks for watching. Hey, as a quick reminder, if you like my video, please give it a thumbs up. You can also click on me and subscribe to my channel, get notified of the latest videos, and for only $2 a month, you can have access to all my Microsoft Office training videos.